Okay, get this. The Economic Survey of India says India will be the world's third largest economy, like really soon, not in some far-off future. We're talking within the next decade. Today, we're going to dive deep into Chapter 5, see how they actually plan to pull this off.
It's a wild goal when you consider they started from, less than $300 billion back in 1993, and they're already estimated to be at $3.6 trillion this year.
Right, and they want to hit fully developed nation status by 2047, their 100th year of independence. Big ambitions. But the world's changed, even in the last decade, a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. The global landscape is way more complex now, right? You've got geopolitical conflicts, nationalism on the rise, globalization kind of declining.
So tougher all around.
Yeah, you could say that. There's this trust deficit making countries want to be more self-reliant. Then add in the whole climate crisis, the pressure on developing nations to go green, energy transition. It's a whole different ballgame than when China was on the rise.
So the old playbook might not work anymore. What's India's strategy for all this? How do they navigate these new challenges?
Well, the economic survey, it lays out a six-pronged approach. And it's different. It's a shift from those big, sweeping reforms we used to see. More targeted now, like a bottom-up approach.
Interesting. So what's the first move in this new playbook?
Boosting private investment. They're really focused on fostering private sector growth, not just relying on those supply-side reforms.
So things like those Atmanirbhar Bharat packages we keep hearing about.
Exactly. Plus the production-linked incentive schemes, the PLI schemes, and of course all that massive infrastructure investment they've been talking about.
Right, right. Creating a space where businesses feel good about investing, growing, leads to more jobs too. But isn't there a risk with that? Like, won't the big corporations just end up swallowing everything up?
That's where the second strategy comes in. Empowering what they call the middle stand.
Okay, middle stand. I've heard that before, but remind me.
Think Germany. They've got the middle stand. These super successful small and medium businesses. Known for innovation, being resilient. India wants to build their own version.
Makes sense. A diverse economy.
Yeah.
Got to have that strong base of smaller businesses. How do they plan to do that? Foster it, I mean.
Deregulation, big-time deregulation, especially at the state and local levels. The economic survey actually points out how much those compliance requirements burden smaller companies. Streamlining that could be huge.
So cutting that red tape, like get that entrepreneurial spirit going, which, let's be honest, India has plenty of. But what about agriculture? Still a huge part of the Indian economy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the third pillar of their plan. Transforming agriculture. It's more than just, producing more food. It's about navigating food security, managing inflation, dealing with climate change. And the economic survey, they've got this pretty radical idea.
Now you've got me curious. What is it?
They're saying that moving away from agriculture, as the country industrializes, it might not be the best way to go, which is a bold thing to say. A lot of developing nations, that's the path they've taken.
So they're saying agriculture could actually be a strength in a world with climate change and all that.
That's what they're suggesting, yeah. The survey talks about balancing that support for farmers with consumer needs. Things like price controls, subsidies. They even mention maybe targeting inflation, excluding food prices.
Whoa, okay. So food prices go up a bit more freely, farmers actually benefit. But inflation overall doesn't go crazy. That's outside the box thinking.
It is. It really shows how everything's connected, Food security, inflation, how farmers are doing. You can't really address one without the others.
Yeah, that bottom-up approach is coming through. Private investment, a strong middle stand, a resilient agricultural sector. Okay, what's next?
Number 4 is financing the green transition. And this is a big one.
It's got to be. Going green isn't cheap.
Exactly. The survey, they estimate India needs $1.4 trillion to meet their green goals.
$1.4 trillion?
No.
So where's all that money coming from?
That's the trillion-dollar question, right? The survey's clear. Domestic resources just aren't enough. They need global green capital. Got to track that. And create a good investment climate.
So making India, like a global hub for green investment?
That's the idea, but it's competitive, right? Other countries want that same thing.
Of course.
That's why the survey goes beyond the usual reduce regulations talk. They're pushing for a full-on sustainable finance ecosystem, blended finance models, mixing public and private capital, and creating institutions that focus specifically on green sectors.
Okay, so not just banks, but institutions that really get those green projects, whether it's renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, all that. It's like they're building this whole system.
Right. It's not just the money. It's making sure it's used right to make a real difference.
4 down, and I'm impressed. They've really thought this through. What's the 5th piece?
Bridging the education-employment gap. This is where things get really interesting, especially for the younger generation.
Yeah, India has a huge young population. Their skills, that's going to be key to all this. How are they going to equip them for these future jobs?
Demand-driven approach, that's what the survey says. Education, skills development, all got to be aligned with what the job market actually needs.
So no more graduating with a degree that gets you nowhere.
Right. It's about looking ahead, what skills will be needed, and then training people for that.
Makes sense.
And it's not just about traditional education either. The National Policy on Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, NPSDE it's called, that gets a big mention. Leveraging technology, too, to personalize learning, make education more accessible.
Right.
It actually fits right in with the national education policy, too.
A one-size-fits-all approach to education, it just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Right? It's got to be about individual needs, different paths to success, whether that's formal education, apprenticeships, vocational training, you name it.
Couldn't agree more. And fostering that lifelong learning, that's got to be key, too. The world's changing so fast. Got to keep learning new skills, stay relevant.
So investing in human capital.
Yeah.
Got it. Skilled and adaptable workforce, essential for the long haul. All right, 5 strategies down. Private investment, the middle stand, transforming agriculture, financing green, and bridging that education gap. What's the last piece of this big plan?
The 6th, and you could argue it's the most important one long term, is building state capacity. Yeah, this is the one about making the government itself, work better, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even the best laid plans, they kind of fall apart if you can't actually make them happen.
Exactly. You got to have a strong, efficient government if you're going to hit those big goals. But the survey doesn't sugarcoat it. They actually point to some reports from the Administrative Reforms Commission, and, well, it's a bit of a mixed bag, honestly.
Okay, now I'm a little worried. What are they concerned about?
Well, they talk about, siloed departments, communication breakdowns between different parts of the government, And the training programs for civil servants, they're kind of outdated. Doesn't sound very efficient.
No, not exactly a well-oiled machine, right? But
yeah.
I mean, the survey wouldn't bring up all these problems without some ideas to fix them.
Right. They've got this program, it's called Mission Karmayogi, and it's pretty impressive, actually. Think of it as a total overhaul of the Indian civil service, top to bottom.
Ambitious. What's involved in Mission Karmayogi?
It's a multi-pronged approach, right? First, they want to boost those skills for civil servants. More modern training, focused on what they actually need to know. Competency-based, No more of those irrelevant training sessions.
Yeah, got to give people the right tools for the job. But skills alone aren't enough, are they? You got to have a system where those skills can be used, where people can actually do their jobs effectively.
Exactly. And that's the second part. Streamlining those HR processes within the government. Break down those silos we were talking about. Get people communicating, collaborating.
So individual skills plus a more integrated government structure.
Yeah.
Agile, responsive to the needs of the people. That's how they'll implement all these big plans.
Exactly. And then there's a third part. This is about creating a more positive work environment within the government. Mentorship programs, that kind of thing. Give civil servants a sense of ownership, responsibility.
It's interesting, right? That focus on the human element. Civil servants, they're people too, after all. A happier workplace, it's got to lead to better performance, a more effective government.
Absolutely. Investing in their well-being, their development. Oh. Ultimately, that's an investment in the entire country's success, right?
So Mission Karmayogi, it's this whole package, tackling everything from skills to HR to creating a better work environment. It's a pretty big effort to change the government from the inside out.
It is. And if it works, it could make a huge difference. I mean, a strong and efficient government, that's the foundation for everything else they want to do, right?
It's all coming together now. Private investment for growth, that middle stand ecosystem. Agriculture that can weather the storms. A commitment to the green future. A workforce with the right skills.
Yeah.
And a government that can actually put all these plans into action. It's a pretty exciting vision for the future.
It really is. And it's based on like a deep understanding of what India is facing, the challenges and the opportunities.
It's not growth just for the sake of growth, right? It's about a more prosperous, equitable future for everyone.
Exactly. And a sustainable one that can handle all these global
Which
challenges.
reminds me, we've been so focused on India itself, we haven't even talked about what all this means for the rest of the world.
Right. What does India rising like this mean for the balance of power, for trade, investment, for the climate fight? Those are big questions.
Definitely a lot more to unpack here. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll zoom out a little bit and look at those global implications of India's ambitious plans. All right, so we've spent the last couple parts of this deep dive really digging into, the specifics of India's plan to become a developed nation by 2047.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? From boosting private investment and cultivating that vibrant middle stand to overhauling agriculture, financing the green transition, even that massive effort to revamp the government itself with Mission Karmayogi.
It's clear they've really thought this through, and it's not just about, economic growth for its own sake.
Right. It's about building a society that's more prosperous for everyone,
Mm.
more equitable, and one that's sustainable, can handle these global challenges we're facing.
But like you mentioned earlier, this isn't just an India story, right? It has implications for the whole world.
Exactly. India's rise is changing things, shifting the global landscape, and it's happening at a time when everything's already kind of in flux. We're moving away from that unipolar world, one superpower dominating everything, towards something more multipolar with several key players.
And India, with its huge population, so many young people, the economy growing so fast, and their foreign policy becoming more assertive, they're poised to be one of those key players.
No,
Right?
absolutely. I mean, they're already the fifth largest economy in the world, and they're projected to overtake Germany and Japan, become the third largest within the next decade.
That's a massive shift in economic power globally. What does it mean for businesses, investors, people all over the world?
It means opportunity. India's middle class, it's huge and it's growing. It's a massive new market for all kinds of things, consumer goods, services, technology.
We're talking about over 1.4 billion people. Many of them are entering the consumer market for the very first time. That's a game changer.
And it's not just about consuming either. India is becoming a hub for innovation, for entrepreneurship. Their startup scene it's thriving, attracting investment from everywhere.
So if you're, I don't know, a big company looking to expand or a venture capitalist looking for that next big thing, India's the place to be.
It is, and it's not just the economics. India's their influence on the world stage is growing too.
Yeah, they're more active in these international organizations like the G20, the UN. They're firming these strategic partnerships all over the place.
They're becoming a voice for the developing world,
Mm.
pushing for things like climate justice, fair trade.
So India's growth story, it's not just about India. It's a story that's going to shape the whole 21st century and beyond, probably.
It is. It's a story with global implications, and it's still being written, which is exciting.
And what does it mean for you, the listener?
Well, that kind of depends, right, on who you are, what you do. If you're, I don't know, an entrepreneur maybe, or a business owner, it might mean exploring new opportunities in India, sourcing products, partnering with Indian companies, maybe even setting up shop there.
Or if you're an investor, maybe it means diversifying your portfolio, looking into India's growth story, seeing what the potential is.
Or maybe you're a student or a young professional. Maybe it means going to India to study, to work, experience that culture, learn new skills.
Yeah, and for all of us, it means understanding that India is a rising power. They've got a unique perspective, a lot to offer the world.
It's a country with so much potential, economically, culturally. It's a country worth paying attention to, learning from, engaging with.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into India's growth vision, we want to leave you with this. India's journey, it's really a testament to ambition, to innovation, to resilience. It's a reminder that even with all the challenges the world's facing, there's always hope for a brighter future.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring.